So, welcome everybody to week 6 of Relate. This is, yeah, feels like to me the last real deep dive exploration that we're going to do. Next week will be a module on sacred sexuality, and then the final week will be, yeah, beautiful, beautiful wrapping up. And yeah, I hope we'll fit everything in today. I had originally planned to do another practice as well, but as I was preparing the content, I felt like, okay, there's a lot here. So let's roll with that. And then, yeah, we will have a very beautiful little ritual manifestation dreaming practice that we will include in the last week. So just reading a few little check-ins from the messages. Tired and glad to be here. Sadness I didn't know was under the surface came up. Yeah, beautiful. It's amazing what we can tap into and just take that moment to pause, right? Thank you. Another comment, feeling good. And then very stressful week, so battling to self-regulate. Yeah. Wow. Great awareness around it. And that's the first step. Lovely. So I have a really great question that as I was going through some notes preparing for today's call, I came across this question that a teacher that I follow had asked ages ago. Um, I'm having a total mind blank now, right in this moment of his name. But anyway, that's irrelevant. I'll share his work at the end of the course because I do really recommend it, or maybe next week along with the sacred sexuality module. But the question was, who do I become when my partner doesn't give me what I want? Who do I become when my partner doesn't give me what I want? And yeah, let's just take 3 minutes here now to just jot down a few little notes in as an answer to this question. So preparing to wrap up that question, I have it in the PDF. So if you want to go a little further with it afterwards, you can. I was giggling a little bit halfway through because I thought, is it cheating if I ask my partner to read out his comments on this? We can do that afterwards, darling. I won't put you on the spot. But yeah, I found that such an interesting question. And when I read my answer today that I had already, journaled on that ages ago, I thought, yeah, still a bit of work to do here. I don't nod. That's worse now that is nodding along. At least we can laugh about these things. Oh, great. Okay, I'm going to do a screen share. Perfect. It's around, okay, so page two. So this week we're going to do a little bit more work around, it's going to say a little bit more work around the nervous system. It's all around the nervous system. But this week we're going to focus on triggers and then also on conflict. And it's around navigating conflict because, yeah, it's not about getting it right or arguing well, you can also do that. It's about having some tools and perspective that can support you when conflict arises. And it's not about not having conflict because we're all going to have conflict. And this is a topic that for me is very potent. I have definitely struggled with conflict like my whole life. And yeah, it's something that I feel like is a constant work in progress. And definitely in the last few months, I think we have gotten a lot better, Ryan and I, at navigating conflict, like huge leaps and bounds. And it's easy in the beginning, there's not really conflict. And then we went into a whole different phase of, yeah, relating through from our wounds. We had some time apart. We came back together last summer. And then, yeah, moving in together has been really, really big. And this work, all of it, has been very, very supportive, but especially around the conflict and the nervous system work, I feel that this is what has had the most impact. Is that something that you'd agree with, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, yeah, definitely agree with that. And yeah, so grateful for what you brought to the relationship container to help us to navigate through that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you. Yeah, and then we did also go and do the next level of authentic relating together earlier this year as well, which has been a huge support. And there are pieces of authentic relating like throughout this course. We are both on the path to being, certified authentic relating facilitators, and then there might be a time where I will do courses that are just authentic relating, like level one and two, especially. I have it integrated into this. This isn't just the authentic relating framework, but there are aspects of it that I found really helpful that I integrated into the whole course, but also today's work now. So, starting with triggers. The more nervous system capacity I have, the easier it is to navigate triggers and conflict. And what I mean by capacity, it's self-awareness and tools and ability to regulate. And also growing that capacity to stay present in the face of conflict. And then I am triggered less. If I am tired, hungry, premenstrual, all of these things are going to have an impact on my capacity to stay regulated and present in the face of conflict. To stay regulated and present anyway, but then in the face of conflict, it's yeah, even more challenging then. So that's what I mean by having capacity. Is there anything that you'd like to add into that, Ryan?
No, no, there's not something I'd like to add into that.
Mm. Thank you. So rather than avoiding conflict, which I think a lot of us do, is there anybody else who likes to avoid conflict in the room? Yeah, yeah. So rather than avoiding conflict, and when we avoid conflict, a few things happen. It's like we self-abandon, first of all. We're self-abandoning, we're not speaking to our needs, we're not sharing what's happening to us. It's like we're self-abandoning, and through our self-abandonment, we're also doing a disservice to the relationship because this icky stuff that makes up the conflict, whatever's going on, it lingers there in the relational field. So by avoiding it, that stuff just builds. It's like having gunk in the bottom of your shower. You know, if you don't clean it out, it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And then one day it fucking explodes and overflows, or it just blocks up altogether. And I think, especially in romantic relationship, like this is the point where you're like, okay, this isn't the person for me. No, they're gone. Because this stuff hasn't been dealt with. The cleaning out hasn't been happening on a regular basis. Sometimes it can happen in the moment. Sometimes it needs time to settle, to be processed, to come back to. We'll get to all of that. But essentially, it's to, yeah, not to avoid it and to work on the skill of actually dealing with it. So on yeah, work on growing capacity to stay regulated and or returning to regulation. You know, we all want to stay regulated. Does it happen? Absolutely fucking not. But if we can nip it in the bud and notice in ourselves, oh, this thing's happening, then we can actually do something with it. Or it happens and we're totally dysregulated. And it's like noticing, like, you know, the comment at the start here, noticing that, and then it's a process. And sometimes if it's, you know, a trigger that happens quickly, we can return from that quickly. But sometimes if it's like a whole week of a stressful thing in work, that decompression time to return to regulation takes longer. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. It's about recognizing the bigger the thing, yeah, the longer, the more work it is then to return to that state of balance and equilibrium within the self. So learning to navigate conflict with skill, that's hopefully what we're doing on this call, and then practicing repair. So it's all of that, I feel, is the key to conflict. This is what has supported me. So what is a trigger? You know, so officially triggers are sensory reminders that cause painful memories or certain symptoms to resurface. If you experience a traumatic event, you likely remember certain sounds, smells, sights related to that experience. Now, when you encounter these sensory reminders known as triggers, it sends you into dysregulation. So this is like when people started talking about triggers a few years ago, this was what it was about. It was about trauma response. What I'm talking about is not at that level. It could be, but there are like everyday triggers. And I have here in everyday life, what we're working with more is triggers are situations, interactions, and reactions that cause us to go into a dysregulated nervous system state. So the first one is, yeah, what was this kind of very official um, definition of triggers? And now when you hear people talking about triggers and glimmers, it's on a much softer, just everyday reactionary state. And that's, yeah, when I talk about triggers now, it's these things that push us into dysregulated state. They knock us over that edge within ourselves. Are there any questions at this stage? Does anybody have anything they want to ask? Right. So trigger profiling. I want to look because I also have my own notes here. I need to keep an eye on them. Um, Trigger profiling. So what, how, and why. So we're going to do a little practice here. We're going to take a few minutes for this. So get out your paper and pen and think of a time in an adult relationship when you have been triggered. So you can just say in the lift at work with John, just get that far. It's like what was the instance? How can you identify that? And then you move into once you have a time identified, the what is setting the scene. What could I see? What could I hear? What happened when you were there? The next part, and it's up on the screen, so go through at your own pace if you're not fully finished yet, is how. How do I know when I'm triggered in my body? Sensations, emotions. And yeah, I feel that this point is really, really important because this is how you notice in yourself when you're dysregulated or when you're on the way to being dysregulated. How do I know when I'm triggered in my body? Sensations, emotions. Story. What is the story you told yourself? I'm thinking about the John in the lift situation. Yeah, John is so self-centered. He always wants to go to his level first. This is just him true and true. I don't matter in this situation. So it's this sort of story. What's the story you told yourself? What was the reactive behavior? How did you react in this moment? What wounds were activated? And the last question is, what was I scared of? What fears did you have? So this type of profiling, do people want another minute on this? This type of profiling is something you can do in any situation or for any situation when you get triggered. And yeah, when you have a situation in your life and it's something that is maybe isn't dealt with in the moment, you can go through this profiling and just think what, how, why, and begin to piece together a bit of a picture for yourself so that you can again begin to map what happens. How do I know when I'm triggered in my body? Oh, this time I noticed something new. What's the story you told yourself? Yeah, this story is something that's coming up throughout life. Is this actually true? And yeah, what was the reactive behavior? What wounds were activated? Like, this is all really valuable information that then you can work with beyond the situation. Okay. So we're going to do a little piece on repair, and then we're going to go into some breakout rooms. Um, okay. So repair. And this is a really, really valuable tool. All of this stuff is just building on what we've already been doing. So I got triggered. Hey, John, Tuesday when we were in the lift, I got super triggered and I reacted. I know I got really angry. I got really angry and, yeah, spoke in a way that I'm not proud of. I'm afraid of, I'm trying to make up something in the hypothetical situation now here in the lift. I'm, yeah, I'm afraid of not mattering to you, of not being valued in work in general. And what I need, what I need is to feel like we're on equal standing. And I have this request that instead of stopping on your floor first every week or every day, we could do every second floor, every second day. So it's about being able to, yeah, own your experience, and then invite connection again. Invite understanding from the other person. Because John in the lift is like, Jesus, she's just nuts. She just went off me there on Tuesday morning and I have no idea what happened. She just blew up. This woman's crazy. What happened? They don't understand what's going on. And when you start to share in this way, people then get an insight of what's happening in your inner world. And suddenly it makes sense. And you have a practical request. Can we do this going forward? And they can say yes or no. They're open. It's an invitation, but it's about, yeah, having some way to structure that you can use to repair coming out of something like this. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. I know a couple of people now joined a little bit later into this practice, so I don't know if everybody has their profiling. So maybe if you end up in a room with somebody who hasn't been journaling now for the whole practice, you can go first and then see if they have a situation that they can share afterwards. So you're going to be with one person in the breakout room. You're going to have 5 minutes each and then 5 minutes to debrief. So in your 5 minutes, you're summarizing your situation. So, like I did, so you're not going into, I was in the lift, the lights were really bright, I could hear the sound of the ding, I could smell the smell of the carpet cleaner. You're summarizing like I did. It was Tuesday morning, I was in the lift with John, and he did this thing he always does, and it really pissed me off. And so you're just summarizing the situation, sharing a little bit about your reflection on it. So when you looked at setting the scene and you had your what, how, and why. So, what was in the scene? How did you know when you're triggered? What was the story you told to yourself? What was the reactional behavior, the wounds and fears? Like, that's the juicy stuff more than the carpet cleaner smell and the lights were bright. So, you want to get into sharing a little bit around that, summarizing the situation, sharing a little bit about your reflections, and then practice the repair. So, then practice. So what I suggest is that you write down the repair piece so that you have it. Because I know when the messages come in, when I share in the chat, they kind of flash up for 10 seconds or something and then disappear, don't they? Um, so I got triggered, own your experience and name it. I reacted in this way. I'm afraid of, and I need, and I have this request. I'm going to pause the recording once you guys get that down. I don't know if I can. Do you still have the screen share? Yeah, perfect. Great. What I had asked was how was this for people? What did you learn? Anybody like to share? You can either unmute or pop it into the comments.
I learned that I don't really do conflict very well or repair, I
Mm,
think. And I actually found it hard to articulate an answer to the four questions or five questions.
mm,
So that was actually quite a surprise.
mm. Yeah, and I think we have never been taught these things. These are like, I think this is all stuff that most of us have never had healthy role models for this stuff. And yeah, it's like a gap, isn't it, in our like relational education. Yeah, thank you. Reading some comments here. Nice to see we had similar issues, discussed anger. Yes, great. It always helps when you are like, okay, I'm not alone in this. Other people understand and experience something similar. And yeah, very useful to start to reframe conflict in relationships, see it as an invitation now. Yes. Yeah, beautiful. And I really see it as an invitation for understanding and connection, deepening connection. And I think Ryan would probably agree that when we move through conflict and manage to get out the other side, there's always like a deepening in our trust in ourselves, our trust in the other person, and just a general deepening into the relationship. And maybe another comment here. Yes, conflict at work is difficult and people tend to avoid that and confront their issues. Yeah, for sure. And it's natural because it's uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. So it's normal and natural that we want to shy away from it rather than actually facing it and tending to the gunk. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again here. And if anybody else wants to share anything else, feel free to unmute or to pop it in the comments. And if there's any questions at any stage, do just let me know. Okay, navigating conflict. So the goal is not to avoid conflict, but to continue doing conflict better. And it's just about improving. This is a skill that we can strengthen. That's how I see this. So we've already talked about this, dealing with conflict when it arises rather than letting it stew and get bigger. And rather than rushing to solve a problem or to be understood, rushing to solve the problem is generally a tendency, and then to be understood. This is what happens a lot. It's like, I'm right, and I want you to get on the same page as me and understand why I'm right. I want you to see what's happening for me, and I want you to get to the point where you agree with me, and then we're on the same page. So instead of rushing to solve the problem or to be understood, aiming for regulation, connection, and then understanding. Understanding myself, understanding the other, and understanding what's really happening. And this is where the core wound stuff, like what's happened, what are the core wounds, what wounds were activated, what was I scared of? This is really part of the understanding where you can move to something deeper that's not just you always want to go to your floor in the elevator first. It's like actually something else much, much deeper is happening here for me. Deep listening doesn't happen when either person is charged. And when I say charged, I mean triggered, dysregulated. When you want and you're moving to understand somebody else, it is very, very challenging to do it when you are in that state. And that's why regulation is the first thing that I have on this list. It's regulation, it's looking to hold, to maintain, or to come back into connection, and then for the understanding. So when conflict arises, name what your experience is, and this is in brief. So you're not like, we're here now in the lift and I feel super annoyed and we're not getting into like a big story. It's just naming what's happening. For example, I'm noticing that my capacity is low. I'm feeling super annoyed, triggered right now, naming what you need. I need to go for a walk, take a breath together. I need space to clear my head, to tend to myself right now. And ideally, not leaving it open-ended. And I love that Fergus had touched on this on his call as well. Can we return to this in 1 hour tomorrow when we both have regulated? And when we return to it, then checking in, how are we both feeling right now? And sometimes there can be still the lingering of like the wounded part of us that's been activated. And sometimes when I'm returning to it, I know myself, I often don't want to return to it. And I'm like, like the stroppy child still. So, but returning to it, if you're returning to it and you're still both super activated, it's possibly a little bit soon to be returning to it. But yeah, the first thing is really, really tending to yourself, taking responsibility for tending to yourself and naming it. It just shares that so somebody else can understand what's happening for you. And then, tending to your needs. Taking a breath together and regulating together is sometimes easier than other times. With some people, it can happen. With other people, it might just be that you need to go and blow off some steam by yourself. And again, like how we talked about in the regulation, it's what you do in that time, that you're not stewing over, this is why I'm right and why can't they understand me and they're so wrong. But instead, really moving into coming back into regulation and letting it go for the moment. So when you are returning to it, taking some breaths and landing together. And this is why we do this at the start of all the practices, because it is co-regulation. When we begin to regulate the breath, our whole system begins to settle together. And then listening to understand, that's understanding their point of view, no interruptions, and not defending. And this can be hard, and these things take practice. So if somebody is sharing their point of view and it's very different from your point of view, one of the common reactions is to be like, yeah, but this is why I'm right. And it's like just like, okay, just breathe, just focus on staying regulated and focus on active listening. So when you share in a conflict situation, and I love this saying, a finger pointed at you is four fingers pointed at me. So rather than blaming the other, sharing your experience. So instead of this is why you're wrong, it's like this is how I feel. And again, it's not when you did this, you made me feel. It's when this happened, I felt. So really owning your experience and sharing it, sharing from the heart, clean and clear communication. So are you sharing from a wound? You never see me, you never prioritize me, versus, yeah, this it is my desire to feel deeply seen, to feel understood. And sharing impact is how you feel or felt about the conflict, and remembering the goal is connection. Connection and understanding. It's not about, you don't have to come to a place where you agree. This isn't, this is about navigating conflict rather than resolution, because the resolution is just connection and understanding, right? You're winning if you get that. And yeah, then taking breaks as you need. So that is when either of you is just regulated. So again, it can be like, okay, I'm feeling super activated right now. Can we just pause for a moment? And then remembering what the aim is, which is connection and understanding. And this is where the reflection comes really well. So if somebody else is sharing, that you can go into that space of deep listening and reflect back to them. What I heard you say, did I get that right? Is there more? These are all tools that are extremely, extremely valuable. And even if nobody, if somebody that you're doing this with has never done any of this work before, they will respond to that because it's about what the work that you're doing and what you can bring to shift a situation. Is there any questions at this stage? Yes.
Can I ask, were you going to, was it
Yeah, no,
somebody
go on.
else or myself?
Yeah, go on.
Oh no. When do you give up? I mean, I hope I'm not being too negative, but I mean, I do know people. I mean, there's probably at a certain point, you know whether you're getting somewhere. Would that be fair to say?
I suppose it's what the somewhere is. Because are you just looking to come into connection, or are you looking to be justified as being right? Because maybe your point of view in whatever the conflict is, maybe they're never going to get on the same page as you. And you could at that moment be like, okay, I just give up. But you can also just be like, okay, we have different opinions. And how can we still be connected? How can we still be in relationship here? And how do we move on from this?
Very
And I think,
helpful, actually. Yeah. Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you. Because I think it can be a little bit of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's like, okay, if we don't ever agree, then this is just not happening. Um, Whereas maybe there are things, and I'm sure, everybody in long-term relationships is going to say that. I remember reading a thing by the Goffmans. They're like leaders in relationship therapy in the world, and they said whatever the conflicts are, it's like something, I don't remember the statistic now, it's something crazy, like 80% of those conflicts will still exist throughout your relationship. Like those things will never be resolved because you just have these differences in opinion. It's like, how can you just stay in connection through that and navigate it? So we're going to do a little bit on that. So making requests. Can we discuss how this might be going forward? And this is going back to, again, like the repair piece that we talked about a little bit earlier around the trigger profiling. And yeah, it's when you have a need and you have a request, you can put that forward. But if you're not using that framework, let's say, and you are doing some deep active listening and you're just trying to come into connection, then yeah, there is then a question, an invitation. Can we discuss how this might look going forward? And if somebody says to you, no, I'm just going to do it my way, then that's how it is with them, and you have to decide what to do from there. But ideally, when you are in conflict and then you've done a little bit of deep listening and you feel like, okay, I'm getting their point of view, they're getting my point of view, how does this look from here? And I love this next practice. If I could have it all my way. And this is just a fantastic way when you have vastly different opinions and perspectives. So in this practice, and we're going to do a little demo, a little demo in a moment. Both parties get to share uninterrupted. So if I could have it all my way, and I just made up an example here now. So if I could have it all my way, if the conflict is around doing the laundry, it was that you just take care of it all. And that would be like the ideal situation for me, that I would tend to a different task and you would do this and I'd never have to worry about it. And then the other person gets to share. Well, if I could have it all my way, we would take turns on a weekly basis. And then it's like finding the middle ground. So where both parties can feel like they're not surrendering, but finding a solution together. And sometimes you will just decide that the thing that you felt really passionate about and it actually just doesn't matter all that much and you can do it the other person's way, or you're going to find something in the middle. So when Ryan asked me, was there a demo today? I said, yeah, but I'm trying to find something that doesn't have too much charge that we can do this demo about. So we did decide on a topic. Great. So the topic we chose, it's my son's birthday. It was my son's birthday yesterday. He just turned 10. And we are going camping for his birthday this weekend. We've invited some other families to join us. And yeah, there are some differences in opinion of how this weekend might look. So we chose this as our topic to begin with. Will I start?
Yeah.
Great. So if I could have it all my way, I would choose to do what my son wants, really, which is going for 2 full nights. So leaving like Friday afternoon, probably around lunchtime, in my ideal situation, right? Leaving Friday afternoon around lunchtime, having plenty of time to get what we need on the way, loads of time to arrive, set up, we'll have the evening. You'd make dinner. And then we'll have a good night's sleep and we'll have Saturday morning together before everybody arrives. We'll have Saturday evening with our guests, camp Saturday night, and then come home at kind of a leisurely pace on Sunday. Maybe, leaving around midday or something.
Hmm.
How does that sound to you?
Yeah, if I had it all my way,
Hmm.
we would go up on the Saturday,
Hmm.
and with the weather being the way it is, that we will only camp for one night.
Hmm. Yeah. And um, so what time would you like to go on Saturday?
I don't know, late morning,
Mm.
lunchtime,
Yeah. And what about coming home on Sunday?
around the same time.
Okay. Yeah. So the middle ground, then, how I see it, would be that Aaron and I could go on Friday, and then you could come up on Saturday and join us then. How would that be?
Yeah, that would work perfect. And I'd even cook
Yeah.
dinner on Saturday.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
the barbecue.
yeah.
I had you down for both nights, Friday
Mhm.
and Saturday barbecue.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like I actually gave a little cue there for a bit more discussion as well, which I said Friday lunchtime because he's working tomorrow, so I know that he wouldn't be able to go at Friday lunchtime. So it just gives a little bit to like, yeah, Friday lunchtime wouldn't work for me because actually I'm not finished, and because of the weather, I prefer to go on Saturday. So you can kind of like delve in a little bit um into the details of how it would look if it was all your way and um yeah, what your preference is. So I felt like I was winning there. It's a good while ago now. It's last year, and my son, I can't remember what we were talking about, and he said to me, "If I could have it all my way," and I was like, "Nice." He was 9 at the time. I thought, "Okay, great. My 9-year-old is on this. He has great negotiation skills." Yeah. And sometimes I'm going to share as well, like in a relationship, sometimes yeah, there's just compromise because actually I don't really want to go tomorrow. The weather is crap, but it's my son's birthday. So, and I already had this discussion with him and he really wants to go tomorrow. So I was like, fine, we'll go tomorrow. And, Ryan actually agreed that he's gonna come for the 2 nights, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And yeah, go on.
Again, can I add in as well, a great tool sometimes as well is, when you ask somebody if there is a bit of conflict or is a difference of what you want to do, where you ask the other person, if you could have it all your way, how would you have it? Because it sometimes gives you a deeper understanding where it's not about if I have it my way, but if they had it their way, what would it look like?
Yeah.
And sometimes that gives me a great deal of context as well in, yeah, how to meet that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and that sounds like the integration of it. Because sometimes we could sit down and do like an actual practice around something if I could have it all my way, if you could have it all your way. But yeah, what you've shared is like how to integrate it into just a natural, organic conversation with somebody who's maybe not willing to light a candle and sit down and have a full-on conversation with you. Okay, thank you. Right, okay, I see there's a couple of questions or a couple of comments. Yeah, so one was just going back to the conflict at work, like exactly uncomfortable and awkward. So that's going back to again why people avoid it. And yeah, another comment on the breakout rooms was lovely, had similar issues and discovered that your responses came from childhood. Yeah, and that's so potent and powerful. And generally, we react in the same way as our parents reacted often. Definitely becoming a mother as well was one of these situations for me when I was like, oh my God, I am my mother in so many reactive situations. Yeah. She had thought about doing this course, and she's not here now to hear me say that. Oh, great. Okay, let me see here where I want to go if I need to share my screen. Okay. Yeah, one more screen share. Okay. If you need to deal with a conflict or an uncomfortable conversation that's not live in the moment. So sometimes something happens, you flee the scene, the workday is over, whatever happens in the situation, but it's not in the moment, and you need to re revisit it. Something needs tending to. So giving some advance notice. So this is really around not landing something on someone. So if you're like, hey, let's have lunch, and then you're suddenly like, when you spoke to me like that last Friday, I really hated it, and da 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 da, and then you're like bringing up this thing that somebody isn't prepared for. It can be really challenging as a receiver to be present with that information. So this framework is around giving some giving someone an idea of what's coming without getting into it. So it's the who, what, where, when, and why. And the example that I have here is, can you and I meet? So that's the who. It's you and it's me. The when, Tuesday at 10 a.m. The where, for a walk at our favorite woods. It could be for a coffee at my place. It could be anywhere, but it's setting the scene. And I want to add in here as well, like when I typed this out and wrote, for a walk, I personally like to sit and chat. And yeah, I like to be face to face and to kind of land together. And I know it can be a lot easier for people if you're not staring face to face and you're actually side by side. This is why they say, when you have a date and you go for a walk, it's a lot easier to chat. It feels a lot more organic than when you're like giving an interview across the table, looking at someone. So it can be supportive to go for a walk or to do something else. And being out in nature is usually hugely regulating. And I really, really noticed this at our last singles event, where it was, we've had lots of outdoor events, right? But they've mostly been kind of busy and we're walking and we're talking. At this event, we were just settled in nature and then people went off and did their practices. I noticed such a difference at that event of how regulated people were. And it actually really surprised me. And I've held a lot of singles events. We've had hundreds of people through the singles events, and there's usually, yeah, a lot of people are dysregulated, and that's for a whole bunch of reasons. They maybe haven't dated in 20 years, or they're really nervous, or they don't feel that they're strong in small talk and meeting strangers. There can be all sorts of reasons, and I really understand it, and we do our best to work to that. But it blew my mind how regulated everybody was, and I am convinced that it is because we were out in nature. So if you have something really uncomfortable, going for a walk could be the way to do it. If Ryan and I had something to discuss, I would personally prefer to sit and be comfortable in our home and we make a cup of tea and maybe light a candle and actually sit down and chat it. That supports me better. But I just wanted to speak a little bit to the regulation of nature, the regulation that nature can help us, support us to come into in ourselves. So the who, you and I, the where, the when, and then the why. The what and the why are kind of in together here. So the what is I'd like to have a chat about, and the what is like I'd like to have a chat about, and then what you'd like to discuss. So it could be I'd like to have a chat about that challenging conversation we had on Tuesday. And the why would be it feels unfinished and I'd like to come back into connection. So the why is like your intention. Why is this important to you? The why could be our relationship matters to me more than the thing we had an argument about. So this gives somebody the option then for them to consent or not to stepping into that conversation. And they might be like, you know what, I really appreciate you reaching out. I'd like to have that conversation, but I'm not ready yet. And that's okay. But this is about not blindsiding somebody where if you're used to brushing stuff under the table in your relationships, and it could be with family, it could be with your friends, if you're used to brushing stuff under the table and then suddenly you're like, landing something on them when they least expect it. Yeah, this is a much easier way and a much more productive way to be able to discuss those tender topics. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have another question. I'm sorry, it seems to be me coming up all the time.
It's okay. I like the questions. It
But
keeps me on my toes.
it's just, I'm reminded of a relationship that I had, and it was a really important relationship. It was actually just with a woman and a friend of mine. It could have been 30 years ago now. But an event happened where she made a joke of me at a dinner party. And no, she made a joke about music that I had liked. And I saw on the phone, I said, "Do you know, I'd like to speak to you about that. Do you know, I think we need to chat about that because I didn't feel happy about it." And she said she was threatened by it. She felt threatened by it, by me saying that. And what was I saying to her? And it ended up that she kept postponing the meeting. Eventually, we did meet, but she was half an hour late. And I said, I can't do this anymore. But anyway, sorry that we didn't need the end of the story. What I wanted to ask, though, but she actually felt threatened by me wanting to talk about the issue.
Yeah, and that's, it's like understanding somebody's capacity as well. It sounds like her capacity was quite low and she really struggled with conflict. And, there can be a whole array of stuff happening there, but also, yeah, she maybe didn't want to have a look at her own behavior and how that would impact you. And yeah, it can also just, if then there's the opportunity there to share, I felt however you felt in that moment. I felt really hurt that my friend would, joke about me in that way. But yeah, if somebody isn't able to meet you there, that's about them rather and their capacity. And, there's an avoidance in that as well of just like not turning up, not turning up, not turning up, turning up late. That's like classic avoidant behavior. And yeah, it sounds like she really struggled with conflict.
No, that's very helpful, actually. I mean, she was in therapy and she would have been one of these people who talked a lot about relationships and about insight and stuff. But I think you're actually right.
Mm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and having this information is one thing, and putting it into practice is another, and that's why I really recommend doing as much of this as you can when you're not in a romantic relationship, because then when you come into a romantic relationship, at least you have a couple of tools and little things under your belt that you can bring. And hopefully the other person is receptive to that. There's definitely a lot of work that can be done before to support you and prepare you for when you come in. I don't know if anybody is on Instagram. I'll share this story. What I shared on my stories today, it was a guy and he said, the problem with dating advice these days is that it's all about finding, the right person who fits your criteria and you blah blah blah. But this is actually only such a small part, and it's actually about learning how to live with somebody. And I was like, yes, like this is it. And this is why I created this course, because I could keep running courses about dating, and there's a lot of value in that, and I really enjoy it when I deliver it. But, if we don't know this stuff that we're covering here, we just sabotage our relationships over and over again because we don't have the tools, and then it's easy to be like, oh, it wasn't the right person. And sometimes it's not. People come for a certain moment in our lives, so it's not to regret anybody who has passed through and hasn't stayed. But it's just about learning the skills so that we can support ourselves to have longevity that we like. Great. So I'm glad that I had another practice I was going to try and cram into today, but I'm really glad that I didn't, because we're going to have a beautiful final day in 2 weeks' time. Next week is going to be a module on sacred sexuality. There will be other people on the call. We will also have a little bit of space to debrief just us the following week, following the call, a little bit like we did with Fergus, um, which I also appreciate. It's been a bit of a exploration, opening up those two modules. Um, yeah, are there any other questions? I'm thinking we'll do a 5, 8 minute breakout room, but let me know if there's any other questions before we do that. Okay, so we're going to practice if I could have it all my way. So you're going to take about 2 minutes when you land in to create a hypothetical situation. You know, I want to whatever it is, just create a hypothetical situation. You can lean on something that's happening in your life, or you can create something totally new. I want to move to Spain and you want to stay living in Ireland. Just a situation where the opinions will be vastly different, and then you're just going to play and have a little bit of fun with this. So get imaginative. If I could have it all my way, next month we would pack up our house and head to Spain, and there'd be sunshine and be able to have a margarita on the beach every Friday. And you could work remote, so you could support us. I'll just mind the kids, it'll be fine. I'll tend to the minding Spanish and I'll be a housewife. Or learning Spanish and being a housewife. So just get playful with it and come up with a situation between you. You'll have a couple of minutes to find out your situation, and then you'll decide who'll start. If I could have it all my way, and then when they're finished, you can ask, "Is there more?" You can do a little reflection. What I heard you say was, and then you'll share if you could have it all your way. So we'll give kind of 2 minutes to come up with your situation, and then 3 minutes each. So once you're finished, remember those cues. Is there more? And then reflect back to them what I heard you say. So you're beginning to integrate them all. and then swap over. So I'll let you know when it's halfways, and otherwise I'll let you find your way yourselves with the cues of asking, is there more, and reflecting back. But I'll let you know the halfway point. Yeah. So I hope there is a few little nuggets there that you can begin to practice and integrate in life during the week. Everything that was on the screen share is also on the PDF. So I'll pop that into the group now and into the Drive folder straight away. And once this recording buffers, then I'll do have that in and out in the morning. For the last week, it would be fantastic if everybody can be there. And yeah, for the last or towards the end of the call, we're going to do a lying down practice. So I'll pop it a little reminder into the group the day before as well. But if it's possible for people to be somewhere comfortable, then that's great. If it's not, that's okay too. You can still join the practice sitting up in your car or wherever you are. But ideally, lying down with a candle lit would be the ideal situation. And yeah, if there's anything that comes up, any questions that you have, anything that you feel we haven't covered that you were hoping to cover or get more clarity on, just pop me a message. Email is generally the best way to get to me, or the quickest way. And I'll do my best to answer all questions and get to anything that needs to be tended to before we wrap up the 8 weeks. But yeah, in between will be next week. And the sacred sexuality module is something I have been wanting to deliver for a really, really long time. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's, where the heart passion lies. So thank you so much, everybody, for making the call and listening to the recording. And I'll see you all at the same time next week.
Thanks, Sinead.
You're so welcome.